Right now, as you are reading this, practice court 6 at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden has completely lost its mind. Not during a match. Not during a final. During a practice session. Fans are pressing through the fences of adjacent courts just to catch a glimpse of a 20-year-old from the Philippines who has not yet won a single WTA title and is ranked 31st in the world. Christopher Eubanks, a former ATP professional who has seen nearly everything this sport throws at crowds, went on broadcast and said organizers genuinely need to move Alex Eala onto a bigger court because the sheer volume of fans flooding the grounds is a legitimate safety concern. That is not hype. That is a logistical emergency dressed up as a tennis storyline. And it did not start in California. 2 weeks before Indian Wells, in Dubai, tournament director Solatoluk sat down for an interview and said something that stopped people cold. Every single match involving Alex Eala at the Dubai Tennis Championships was completely sold out. Not well attended. Not buzzing. Gone. He said people were desperately trying to get tickets and there were none left. And then he added the line that has been circulating ever since, that in his entire tenure running that tournament, dating back to 2019, he had never witnessed anything like it. Think about what that means. This is a director who has hosted world number ones, defending Grand Slam champions, and the biggest names in women's tennis for years. And a player ranked outside the top 30 produced something he had never seen before at his own event. That ticket frenzy did not stay in the UAE. It followed her straight to California. The Indian Wells Tennis Garden has hosted legends on its courts. Steffi Graf won the Sunshine Double here. Serena Williams turned this desert into her playground for the better part of 2 decades. Martina Navratilova herself won back-to-back women's events at this very tournament at the age of 33 and 34, a fact that tells you everything about how extraordinary that woman's career was. And now, in 2026, Navratilova is watching Alex Eala's rise from the outside. And what she said about this 20-year-old on the WTA's official platform genuinely caught people off guard. But before we get to Navratilova's words, let us establish exactly what kind of moment this is and why it carries the weight that it does. Last year, Indian Wells set an all-time attendance record. 54,268 fans passed through the gates across the 15-day event. That was without Eala in the draw. She was not even in the conversation. Now she is here as a seeded player for the very first time at a WTA 1000 event, ranked 31st in the world, and the tournament's own website is already describing her as one of tennis's most delightfully unkept secrets. The infrastructure that handled a record-breaking crowd last year is now being stress-tested by a player who had not yet won a main tour title when all of this began. California has the largest Filipino population in the entire United States, close to 2 million people. That is not a fan base that needs to travel cross-country or book international flights. They are already there, already mobilized, and already descending on the Indian Wells Tennis Garden with a level of energy that the ground staff was simply not prepared for. When Eala held her first training session on practice court 6, fans were pressing through fences of adjacent courts just to watch, before a single competitive ball had been struck. The broadcast analysts discussed it live on air, and one of them put a question out there that has since taken over the tennis conversation entirely. Could Alex Eala already be the biggest draw in women's tennis globally right now, at this very moment? His colleague did not hedge. He described venues in Australia and Dubai as standing room only, called the atmosphere around her matches insane and massive, and compared what is happening around Eala directly to what Carlos Alcaraz produced on the men's side during his breakthrough period. One analyst went further. He said it is bigger than Alcaraz. That the Doha crowds were insane for her. That you want to tune into her matches just to see what it is like on the court, separate from the tennis itself. Is she bigger than Sabalenka? Is she bigger than Coco? Those are the questions being asked on broadcast right now about a player who does not yet have a WTA singles title on her resume. That gap between ranking and real-world impact has become one of the most unusual storylines in recent tennis history. Now let us talk about Navratilova. Because when Martina Navratilova speaks about a rising player, the tennis world listens. 18 Grand Slam singles titles. Back-to-back Indian Wells wins in her mid-30s. 5 decades of watching this sport evolve from Chrissy Evert to Steffi Graf to Serena Williams. Her eye for talent is about as calibrated as it gets in this sport. Navratilova sat down with the WTA's official platform for a Sunshine Swing preview ahead of the 2026 BNP Paribas Open. And when Eala's name came up, she laughed before she even started talking. That laugh, for anyone who follows Navratilova closely, is not dismissive. It is the laugh of someone who recognizes something genuinely tricky to deal with. She called Eala crafty. She noted her left-handedness as a genuine tactical weapon and said she uses her variety in a way that causes real problems for opponents. She even reached for a boxing analogy, invoking Manny Pacquiao to describe the kind of explosive, unpredictable game Eala brings to the court. Coming from a woman who built her entire career on outsmarting bigger, stronger, harder-hitting opponents, that kind of framing is not a coincidence. Navratilova sees something in Eala's game that resonates with her own philosophy about how tennis can be played and won. But Navratilova did not stop at the compliments. She went straight into an honest assessment of where Eala still has work to do, and she was direct about it. The serve. That is the area she identified as Eala's biggest ceiling right now. She said Eala needs a bigger serve with more kick, and she acknowledged that her slight build makes it physically harder to generate the kind of pace that top 10 players lean on to control matches. Her exact framing was telling. She said Eala needs to beef up a little and punch up that serve. Coming from Navratilova, that is not a criticism designed to diminish. That is a roadmap. She is essentially saying the raw ingredients are already there, the tactical intelligence is already working at a high level, and physical development is the final piece of the puzzle. What cannot be ignored in that assessment is what Navratilova did not say. She did not question Eala's shot selection. She did not raise concerns about her movement, her mentality, or her ability to compete against elite opponents. She flagged one specific technical gap, which tells you that in Navratilova's view, everything else is already functioning at a level worth taking seriously. Navratilova's comments about Eala came in the same interview where she warned Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Goff that the circuit is changing around them. She was explicit. Players like Eala represent a new generation that has clarity of action, knows how to study opponents tactically, and no longer walks onto the court intimidated by big names. That is a structural observation about women's tennis, not a one-tournament storyline. To understand how Eala arrived at this moment, you have to understand the season she has built. She came into Indian Wells carrying a 10-6 record for 2026, having already reached the semifinals in Auckland and the quarterfinals in Dubai. The ranking points from those runs pushed her to a career high of 31st, enough to break into the top 32 seedings at Indian Wells and earn a first-round bye for the first time in her career at a WTA 1000 event. That bye is not a minor detail. It means she enters the draw with one fewer match to survive, one fewer opportunity for an early exit, and the mental advantage of knowing the tour has formally acknowledged her among its elite tier. In Dubai, while the ticket frenzy was building outside the gates, Eala was doing something on the court that justified every bit of it. She dismantled world number 7 Jasmine Paolini of Italy in the round of 32, her first top 10 win of 2026, in a performance that had broadcast analysts predicting the upset before it happened. She pushed deep into the quarterfinals before falling to world number 4 Coco Gauff in straight sets. The result against Goff was lopsided 6-0, 6-2, but the journey to get there told a completely different story about where her game currently sits. And when she spoke publicly after the Dubai run, what she said was quietly revealing. She acknowledged that the atmosphere in each tournament had been amazing and described this as a different start to the year than any other she had experienced. Understated. Precise. The words of someone who is processing something large and trying not to get ahead of herself. The Indian Wells draw gives Eala a path that is compelling on paper without being a gift. A win against Diana Yastremska in the round of 64 opens up the bracket. The two have met before at the 2025 Eastbourne Open, where Eala won 6-1, 6-2 before going all the way to the final. Beyond that, the draw could produce a third-round rematch against Coco Gauff, the same Gauff who beat her 6-0, 6-2 in Dubai. And further into the tournament, Jasmine Paolini, the player Eala already beat this season, sits as a potential quarter-final opponent. The bracket is not kind, but it is not impossible either. And Eala has already demonstrated this season that she can compete against top 10 players on big stages. She is also competing in the doubles draw alongside world number 18 Eva Liss of the United States, the same partnership that reached the semi-finals in Auckland in January. Their first-round opponents are Jelena Ostapenko and Hailey Baptiste. A deep doubles run alongside a singles campaign of this intensity would be a significant test of Eala's stamina across 2 weeks in the California desert. The physical demands of that schedule are exactly the kind of thing Navratilova was pointing at when she talked about needing to build up physically. 2 draws, 2 sets of opponents, 2 weeks of California heat and pressure. That is a serious ask of a 20-year-old still climbing. The timing of this Indian Wells debut also carries a specific pressure that goes beyond the ticket frenzy and the broadcast comparisons. Immediately after Indian Wells comes Miami. And Miami is where Eala made her name last year, where she beat IGA Swiatek, where she beat Madison Keys, where she beat Jelena Ostapenko, where she went all the way to the semifinals and introduced herself to a global audience that had not yet been paying attention. Those are ranking points she will need to defend. If her Indian Wells run falls short and Miami follows a similar path, the ranking could move in the wrong direction at exactly the moment the tennis world has decided to start watching. If she goes deep at both, the top 20 becomes a real possibility for the first time in her career. Christopher Eubanks made a logistical argument that says more about where Eala stands than any ranking or statistic. He pointed back to Australia, where fan crowds around her side courts became physically unmanageable. Mobs forming, lines stretching far beyond what the infrastructure was designed to handle. His message to organizers was simple: put her on a bigger court so the situation stays safe. That is a former ATP professional making a venue management argument about a WTA player who has not yet won a title on the main tour. The gap between her ranking and her real-world impact has become the central tension of everything happening around her right now. Indian Wells broke its own attendance record last year. With Eala in the draw for the first time, the question of what happens to that number is not a trivial one. The madness is real. The demand is verified. Navratilova has weighed in with equal parts admiration and challenge. The California Filipino community is already at the gates. And the tennis underneath all of it is good enough to back up every word of the conversation surrounding it. That is the full picture of what Alex Eala at Indian Wells 2026 actually means: sold-out arenas, a Navratilova stamp of approval, a ticket frenzy that crossed continents, and a 20-year-old from the Philippines who is somehow managing to carry all of it without blinking. If you made it this far, you already know this channel covers tennis the way it deserves to be covered: real facts, honest context, and perspectives that go deeper than the highlights. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications, because this run is still unfolding and we will be here covering every development as it happens. Drop your prediction in the comments below: quarterfinal, semifinal, or something nobody is expecting. Let us see who gets it right. Court era tennis. We will see you at the next one.